is the Alex Jones Show Sunday edition with me, Paul Joseph Watson, Infowars.com. And riding shotgun is David Knight. Of course, we just played the clip before the break of David Cameron comparing anybody who questions the official narrative of 7/7 or 9/11, or indeed any terrorist event or any explanation behind the rise of ISIS in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, to conspiracy theorists. He basically said that anybody who says that, who questions the official narrative, is a recruiter for ISIS insurgents in the Middle East. Of course, we've also got the Saudi prince, the ex-ambassador to the US, saying that the ultimate agenda behind the attack on ISIS in Syria is the removal of Assad, regime change in that country. So we're going to go to that clip now and discuss it. Here's the clip.
Are these airstrikes against ISIS the first step in then ultimately removing Assad?
I don't know, but I hope they are. Because you can't simply deal with ISIS and not deal with Assad.
There were Saudi warplanes involved?
Absolutely.
Muslims dropping bombs on Muslims?
Well, you know, we don't consider ISIS as being a Muslim group because of what they do to Islam.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, they have done everything they can to come after Syria. They'll even make alliances with Israel, the Saudis. So, I mean, that's pretty disingenuous to see that. It's also the same sort of thing as we're talking about over the break about the Asymmetric Warfare Center in Virginia. When I was doing research on that before Joe Biggs and I went out there, I looked at their seminar that they had back in 2006 talking about what had worked and what hadn't in Iraq. Basically, most of it hadn't worked. But what they had learned was that what motivated these people was not religious extremism. They were very clear about that. They said they're motivated by the fact that they don't have any self-determination. They don't have any control over their lives because we've invaded them. That's what they're fighting against. I mean, it's the same type of, it's not some kind of Islamic caliphate that's really motivating this terrorism. And of course, that's presuming that this is an organic, natural resistance, a blowback. It's much deeper than that. This government has been, as you pointed out many times, training, equipping, fostering this, trying to come up with every excuse they can to get into Syria.
Right. And every academic study, there's a Washington blog post article on this, which basically goes through the list. Every academic study proves that the main wellspring of terrorism in the Middle East is the fact that the US, the UK, the NATO countries are flooding the region with weapons, are bombing the area. This radicalizes the region. This creates terrorists. It has nothing to do with, as David Cameron said before the break, you know, quote, conspiracy theories. And then we have the nerve of Saudi Arabia to lecture us on combating terrorism when Saudi Arabia has beheaded more people in the last month alone than ISIS has beheaded since its foundation. You know, Saudi Arabia, a country that treats female drivers as terrorists under their new anti-terror law, a theocratic dictatorship whose legal system is completely brutal, arcane, based on Sharia law, which ISIS embraces itself, and yet they're supposedly engaged in the attacks against ISIS. The 28 pages that were censored from the 9/11 Commission report implicated Saudi Arabia in the attacks. And now we've got them lecturing us on how to fight terrorism. It's pretty rich, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And telling us that we need to commit money and personnel into this. This is clearly they have a lot of interest that they're not talking about in this area that will allow them to even make allies with people like Israel that they say are their sworn enemies. They have an agenda here that is far beyond what they're saying.
And we shouldn't forget that Saudi Arabia, along with Qatar, Jordan, and here you see the graph, charts show that US policy has increased terror attacks. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, if you scroll down the list there, since the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, you see that terrorist attacks have risen since the declaration of the war on terror in 2001. Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East in general. US military involvement in the Middle East does not combat terrorism, which is, again, why we see these airstrikes on ISIS. It's not going to have the desired effect based on the past 15 years of history, even in Asia, as you see from these graphs. It's had the opposite effect because they don't want a stable Middle East. That's the whole point. And in fact, another article that we can get to is defense contractors are making a killing as a result of these airstrikes on ISIS. This is out of firstlook.org. Defense contractor stocks have far exceeded the performance of the broader market. A Bloomberg index of the 4 largest Pentagon contractors rose 19% this year compared to 2.2% for the S&P 500. So again, ISIS are the best enemies money can buy. You know, in the United States, there's a lot of talk about the infrastructure collapsing, the bridges are crumbling, 21 trillion in debt by the end of this year. But, you know, don't worry, there's plenty of money available to bomb the terrorists that the United States, the Obama administration, created in the first place as a result of arming these jihadists in Syria. You see it there out of CNN money.
Debt with China to do this.
Exactly. Defense stocks up big as ISIS crisis escalates. So the main beneficiaries from the bombardment of ISIS in Syria and Iraq are the military-industrial complex that has a rotating door with Washington, with the Obama administration.
They've got new profit centers. They always had the Cold War that was reliable for them. When that disappeared, they needed Islamic fundamentalists as a new profit center, terrorism as a new profit center. They were able to move that into a massive new business of equipping the police, militarizing the police, and now they've brought back the Cold War. So, I mean, this is salad days for the military-industrial complex. They've never seen anything like this. And I just want to point out, too, just as they said in Foreign Affairs magazine, just as the Asymmetric Warfare Center said, blowback is a real phenomenon in these areas, and it's when they go in and take away these people's self-determination that they then start, that makes them recruitable for these different groups. And what they do is, at that point, they coalesce around the religion. In other words, the asymmetric operation, asymmetric warfare people, the counterinsurgency operations who had fought these people in Iraq said, it isn't being driven by religion. Instead, what we're coming in, taking over, invading these countries, denying them their self-determination, they have no economic future, that is driving them into religious extremism. So it's the opposite way around. And yet they're coming in and saying it's religious extremism, so we need to take that down, and then broadening that out to any criticism of 9/11, of 7/7, and of the government's official story, any criticism of the government, period.
Exactly. And then we have Obama on CBS. We're going to get to his comments after the break, but he basically acknowledged that the growth of ISIS or ISIL in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq, was directly as a result of the destabilization of Syria. Of course, what he didn't say were the causes, were the influences that led to the destabilization of Syria, which was the arming of the so-called moderate rebels. We'll get to that after the break. The Alex Jones Show. Stay tuned, Infowars.com.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force from InfoWars Life.